Good evening, everybody. It's good to have you here tonight. This is our regularly scheduled Caldwell Urban Renewal Agency Board meeting. It's December 9th, 6 p.m. We'll ask our secretary to call the roll, please.
Commissioner Porter?
Here.
Commissioner Brooks?
Here.
Commissioner Warwick?
Here.
Commissioner Doty?
Here.
Commissioner Moore?
Here.
Commissioner Allgood?
Here.
Commissioner Cole?
Here. Very good. We have a full house. We're going to begin this evening with a couple of special presentations. Our first is a 5-year strategic plan concept, and Ray Lynn is going to kind of walk us through some of those steps and the rationale and the reasons. Welcome, Ray Lynn.
Good evening. There's that thing. This shouldn't be too detailed. It's just something that I wanted to talk to you guys as a board about to see if it's something that we wanted to move forward with. I don't know about you, but reading the North Urban Renewal Plan, it's 200 and something, 71 pages, and there's a lot to it. And I think I received this lovely brochure in the mail, and I'd be happy to pass it around. It's from the Capital City Development Corporation, which is the Boise Urban Renewal District. And they have quite a few areas, but the way they put their plan together to get information out, I think is kind of important, just to kind of show what we're doing and that transparency, which is something I'm all about, is transparency. And so I wanted to just put this out here and see if it's something we wanted to do or not. So what is a 5-year plan? So this is kind of like my take on what a 5-year plan would be in it, but I think if we did go forward with it, it can be any one of these things plus more. You know, it really shows what's from the north area plan, putting it into a smaller increment of 5 years to put goals on those and be able to achieve that with specific properties or specific projects. And it really helps to look forward instead of, I know a lot of the projects that we are looking at right now are backwards because the east area is close. Within the 5-year plan, you want actual items, measurable items. And then it also creates this framework that allows our community partners to collaborate with us because they know what we're planning on and what we're looking at. So I think that really helps to start more conversations. Within the North RA, I just pulled out some of the broad projects. There's a lot of broad projects that are just like, this is our goal for this area, but it doesn't talk about, for example, with the TIF agreement that we just did for the north area, doesn't talk about that specific project. It just says, hey, this is an expense that we can incur. And so with a plan, a 5-year plan, we can delineate specific projects or transportation or like where we're at in the plan and what we want to do. Where with the plan itself, the 20-year plan, it just is for the entire area instead of looking at parcels or looking at, you know, what we want to do as a comprehensive area. Do we want to build out transportation first or utilities first, or what are we doing in the next 5 years as a priority? It can include budget or estimates of what we're trying to spend or what we're willing to spend. And so I think that's kind of important as well. And then what type of partnerships are there and what do we want to do with our partners? You know, obviously the development community has a lot. We work with the county. There's a lot of taxing districts within that area as well. And so we want to get their input in this and be able to say, hey, what are you looking to do with this area and what can we do with this area as well? And then I don't think the link, could you click on the link, the second one? Is it open? There you go. So scroll down a little bit. This is just an example of a specific, like, stay right here, of what kind of, this is just one of the project areas that the Development Corporation has. And so this is not, you know, I wouldn't say we want to go straight to this, but something just to think about as like, hey, do we want to include this, do we not? So I just wanted to show you an example, to see if this is something that we're interested in doing, to talk about, if we wanted to do it in an open meeting like this, or have like a subcommittee. So that's kind of what I wanted to bring forth to you guys. So, I don't think there's any, do I have another, we close that? I think that's it. Oh, yeah. So with next steps, like I said, a subcommittee, so we can get some recommendations, put some timelines together. And then this is something that we would, once we have it in place, we would adjust annually, to put it out that next year and really allow for, different community stakeholders to be able to have those projects inputted. But I think it's just something forward-looking that I wanted to bring before you guys. And this is from the plan, this is the area, and so, as you can see, it's pretty broad. There's a lot of parcels, and I know when, I hear a lot of the projects is in one area, but there is a lot of area here that we can discuss and put projects to if we want to build out, you know, where our focus is. So I just want to, I don't think we talk a lot about what the north area looks like, and so I just wanted to put a map to it, so. And that's it.
Very good, thank you, Raylene. Questions for Raylene? Mr. Doty?
Just a comment, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Raylene, for the presentation. I obviously support strategic plans. I think they're great. I think the last picture you showed was from 2021, and with the new comp plan coming on board, once that gets finalized, I think it would be a good idea to set what type of projects we're looking. Not only that, it'll help the staff know when people come in and want to help us in Caldwell, that they know what's going to go on in those areas. So I certainly would want to do that. I'd want the comp plan approved first, but then after that, certainly what we're looking for in those areas would be great. Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Doty. Mr. Moore?
Commissioner Brooks is before me.
Oh, sorry.
So Raylene, thanks for putting this together. I think that's another task that you're taking on that shows your broad spectrum of work, so thank you. Instead of parcels, and I'm switching gears here from work, I just walked from work to here, so instead of parcels, tell me what you mean by that versus.
So I think a lot of times, especially when we look at tax increment, you know, sometimes it's parcels because those are property owners, but maybe looking at projects cohesively, such as, you know, where does road infrastructure work to help redevelop the entire area? You know, not just one specific parcel, but really, you know, because our goal is that redevelopment and revitalization of that area. And so how do we, in a whole comprehensive plan type process for those projects, how do we redevelop that entire area to make it our dollars worthwhile within, you know, strategic? So, you know, when we spend $1, that we get $5 back into the community, things like that.
Okay, thank you. Define partners.
Partners, there's a lot, you know, taxing districts, also businesses. I think that even looking at grants or foundation grants to really help us, I know we're looking at to help with like the brownfields environmental. So like, I think partners is anyone interested in that area. Those are partners. There's other taxing districts. Like, I think there's a lot of partners out there that we could talk to that currently maybe we're not having those conversations with in a whole look. So
at the end of this 5-year plan that you're saying here, we would see what kind of numbers that would generate, what kind of investment in that area at the end of this, right? Is what we'd see another set of numbers beyond this.
that would be the goal, is that's why you would review it annually, you know, because you're, you know, obviously how urban renewal works is that with the redevelopment, the increment goes up, and so then we can reinvest some more. And so the hope would be that those numbers would slowly build quicker than they are right now.
Yeah, absolutely. So let me ask you this, you ready to take on something like this?
I think that this is not just a me project. I think this is a we
Right.
project, whoever wants to be involved. But I think putting it together, I'd be happy to do that, bring it cohesively together with everybody's discussion. But for me to just say, hey, these are the projects, that's a lot of work for me that I don't
Right.
have all of that knowledge for.
Yeah.
So,
Okay, well, thank you. That's all I have.
Raylene, if you could back up a couple of slides, the Boise material had things broken into 5 categories, and maybe that would help us frame our thinking a little bit too. If you could run through that. Certainly Boise's, the CCDC is a much different environment than urban or rural Canyon County. So if you could just share what those 5 areas were.
Yeah,
Those
so
5
they-
categories. There they were.
there we go. So they have these 5 types of partnerships. So the type 1 is one-time assistance. And theirs is that they provide a one-time grant up to $200,000 for public improvements. And funding is based on a dollar-for-dollar match with the private developer's investment. Type 2 is general assistance. This is intended to assist most projects and provides reimbursement for public improvements through the actual tax increment generated by the project. And then type 3 is transformative assistance. And this makes available a more customized partnership for projects that are deemed by the board to be transformative in nature and benefit to the community at large. Generally, these are higher value projects. And then type 4 is capital improvement project coordination. And it allows CCDC to adjust code time, accelerate, and subcontract capital improvement projects in coordination with private developers or other public agencies. And then type 5 is that property disposition, and this is a competitive RFP process. So,
And then while you have that open, if you could highlight those 5 key strategies that show up. I can read most of them, but not all of them.
so this, I think, is a lot to do with the goals of the board themselves. And so that's something that we could talk about, I think, within it. But the economic development, the infrastructure, mobility, placemaking, and special projects. So I think those are specific to CCDC. But within our plan, I think, we could come up with, if we wanted those same strategies or if we wanted different type of strategies.
Thank you. Mr. Auger.
Yeah, Raylene, one of the things that is real interesting to me on this, I would hope that this would give us the ability to scale our investment in our debt as we move forward, so we're not overreaching what our plan is. If we could, I know this is bigger than what it sounds like in this 10 minutes that we've had discussion, but kind of knowing where we can go and how much of an investment we can afford or how much debt load we can afford based on what our plan is for the next year or two would be very helpful when we decide our budget. Or someone comes in with something that's outside of this plan, it would help us kind of decide how much we're going to extend ourselves is the way I'm seeing it.
And that's what I see in here is that they, with specific projects or even project coordination, is that they assign a dollar amount with that. And so I think that's what would be helpful is we can say, this is our plan and these are the dollar amounts that we're willing to put towards these projects right now. Or if we decide to look at bonding, like that could be another option. And I think that's an additional conversation that we will have if we could have it another time. But, if that's the direction we wanted to go, so.
Yeah. I'm excited about it. I thank you for bringing it forward.
Very good. Thank you, Raylene.
Thanks.
Appreciate it. Our next special presentation is from Lee Genke regarding the Chicago Street cottages. Welcome.
Welcome. So I am an aging Gen Xer who doesn't seem to know how to use technology. I've now sent my 5th version of this presentation, hoping that we can get the right one up real quick. Yeah, okay. No, so it still didn't come through. Sorry. Yeah, sorry guys. It's just typos and all that fun stuff, so anyway. If we can, maybe a way to do that, or should I? Sorry, guys, thanks for your patience.
No problem.
So here we are again, guys. Good to see you all. Kind of a couple things. One is I want to thank Commissioner Doty, Commissioner Moore for your help last week or last month. Much appreciated. Second thing is I need to correct the record about my last name. I suffer with that Polish last name. It could be worse. It could be like Krzyzewski, spelled with a K, but my last name is Jinke. So an I before E, except after C. So little bit of fun there. So y'all, I came and talked to you guys now in October. We put the property under contract. We've done physical due diligence. We ran into a stopping point to where there were some environmental concerns because the site's an old gas station. The question is that there are no records about like what was going on there. We did a physical study of it, found that there are no tanks there, and the site is actually clean. Okay. Our intention as far as this timeline goes is to close on the property on roughly 30 days from today, and then have building permits in hand and start February 2nd or February 1st. The one outstanding thing though is, come on, urban renewal status still remains indeterminate. I've had some conversations with Mr. Jenkins. I've had a couple brief emails with staff. I still don't know really where we are.
We only use for work release, and that now houses people.
Okay. Well, not the only one having. And as a developer, like I tend to operate in a very binary fashion. It's a yes, no. So if you get to yes, you proceed. If you get to no, you stop. I don't like indeterminate, because indeterminate means I don't know, and I'm trying to get to the bottom of it. It's like, what are we going to do here? And so my hope is today that we can have a determined process, and that we can have a yes and no, or at least a very clear way forward. Remember, my ask is $175,000. What I'm trying to do is add and update the sidewalks per the city. I'm trying to pave the alley in the back, again required by the city. The underground power in the alley, they're trying to underground the power in the alley, install a fire hydrant, and have a 15% contingency in this. Okay. I guess a couple things is like through this whole process though, it's, something that just as a citizen and at risk of confusing my project is that I have to ask the question about, are we ready for this? Are we ready for doing infill development? Because there's no real clear defined process when it comes to creating an urban rural district or as a developer. An example being is that I can go to the building department. They have a checklist that says that if I have these things inside this packet, I submit that. I get a phone call from the building department. They say, okay, hey, you got this, or I need you to correct this. And 30 days later, a building permit pops out the other side. I've really struggled with trying to clearly understand what the process is here today to get this going. The other thing, like going through my process, is that one of the reports I have talks a lot about the environmental issues that we have on the north side of downtown. There is a history of heavy industrial use. There's a history of numerous gas stations. There's a dry cleaner that was over there, and there's not clear records as to how we're going to whether or not a site has been remediated, or whether or not and has been remediated, or what sort of contaminants remain there. There are also heavy industrial uses right now that we know are going to need to be remediated. So my challenge to you guys is to maybe I'll be totally fine and happy with the spot district, but my challenge in thinking about the issues that are coming in front of you guys and the issues that are potentially there is to think bigger than just the spot district, and to think about the larger part of downtown, about thinking about how are we going to fund the environmental remediation? Because I can tell you from my experience, and looking at these reports and stuff like that, that there is several $1 million worth of remediation that's going to need to be done by somebody. Some of those old users who caused the environmental damage are no longer there. So ultimately that falls back upon something like urban renewal or us, the taxpayers, to deal with. So kind of a couple things is my challenge to you guys is to think bigger about this district. You know, a bigger district enables us to deal with those environmental issues. Also means faster payback to a developer. So it means that more guys like me who are incented to go deal with the place that time forgot. Okay. There's also historic precedent, you know, to this. And I'll show you that in the next slide here. But also, you know, our impact will be bigger, and we'll be able to create a legacy and not limits on this. Let me show you this map. So this comes out of an ordinance that was passed nearly 10 years, well, almost 10 years to the day by the City Council of Caldwell. City Council, along with the state, declared the area that's highlighted blighted. And it called upon the Caldwell Housing Authority to get more active inside of this area. I think we can all agree that 10 years has gone by and very little has been done in that area. Time has again forgotten that area. So I encourage you guys to think bigger, but also don't forget my project in the process. So I appreciate y'all's time. We're looking forward to closing on this project and looking forward to seeing some forward progress as it comes to, you know, getting some help from urban renewal. So, any questions?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We talk about the process often, and I'm just as confused as you are. If you were to ask me as a chairperson sitting up here, not a chairperson, but as a commissioner sitting up here, I couldn't tell you what it is either. We've asked for it numerous times. I don't know if anyone really knows what the process is. However, with your project that came through, whenever that was, one or two councils ago, Mr. Waterman was here, and I believe we did a head nod maybe, or whatever we did to say move this forward. So in my opinion, it should be ready to go at the first meeting, January 1. That was the unofficial or official marching orders to move through to get that going. So I believe now it would be up to the attorney's office to write that paperwork up. None of us up here are attorneys. I think we do have a retired judge. He still might carry his card, I'm not sure. My point is, it's not his job to do that. And so hopefully that got relayed to Mr. Hilty to have that ready to go in January from Mr. Waterman.
Well, you know, and I gave Mr. Waterman my card in October, and I said I'd hope that we heard from him, that I'd hear from him. And, you know, I got an email from him just saying, hey, where are we at with this? Like,
Well, it
3 days ago.
My understanding is it should move forward with the legal document to get it accomplished. Am I off looking at the other commissioners? Did I have the wrong understanding, or is that the understanding that you all had?
Mr. Genke, Mr. Chair, if that's okay. Mr. Genke was here 2 meetings ago, and then last meeting it was brought up, and the comment was brought up that there was a concern with ground testing, whatever was going on there. And so then we discussed, well, if we don't have any idea how that ground testing came out, we're not going to move forward till we do. And now, if I wrote it down here, is the environmentals clear? Are you good on that?
The environmentals are clear. That was relayed to staff prior to, you know, prior to this last meeting. So.
Okay, because that was the discussion we had at the last meeting. And then, are you done?
Yeah,
Go
I
ahead.
just left my mic on. Sorry,
Okay.
Chris.
So for me personally, I won't speak for the rest of the committee, but this is a little backwards from what we normally do. We normally have a blighted piece of property. We put out an RFP and say, what are your proposals for this piece of property? In this particular case, you already have the proposal and the project. We're kind of doing it backwards, and I don't believe there's any dissent that this is a blighted piece of property that needs to be developed. I think that's pretty universal. So the ground issues are a no problem.
Yeah. they're not a problem. And the thing about it, and as I've relayed to the conversations I've had with Steve Jenkins and a couple of the other commissioners, is that an environmental concern like that would only change my ask. Is that we would still proceed, but we'd also turn around and ask for some assistance in remediating the property at that point.
Okay.
So, you know, I guess that's kind of, maybe there's a little bit of wires crossed and whatnot in the way the information was relayed, I guess, but I still kind of remain confused because, as to how the process works, because I have a handful of other projects that are in that, you know, in that north area that I'd like to go to, you know, that need some help with this. The thing is like, this has been really challenging to try to figure out, and, you know, these are relatively small projects. And so I have, you know, my core business is doing large-scale, you know, single-family development, you know, so my option is that I can either sit here and do this infill stuff, or I can go buy another farm, and I don't necessarily want to do that.
Anything else, Mr.
Well, I
Earl?
just, kind of, some of the next step is for Ray Lynn to figure out how much it would take to reach this 175,000 that's asked for.
So I would need to do a feasibility study, and I will tell you, to do the Kimball and Arthur one, that took me about a month and a half to do. And so I appreciate, you know, the timeline, and I understand that, but with the new year coming on, if I started it now, I'd have to restart it in January. And really, I'd have to wait for the county to get me updated base numbers, which when I talked to Brian Stander, he said he really wouldn't have good numbers for me until June. So,
Until when?
June. And that's normally when we get the first set of
So,
numbers anyway, so.
so Mark, is that the first step? What is the first step to get this rolling?
Sure. So, I mean, as the commission's aware, I mean, we're in the process of creating a site-specific urban renewal agency right now. So the steps should be somewhat familiar to you. The first step is staff needs to understand what the boundaries are going to be. Once we know that, we have to go to the city council and seek a declaration that the area is blighted, which again, based on the map in front of you, we should be able to do. From there, then the plan needs to be created. And the substance of the plan is, it's not just Ray Lynn, but we need to work with Public Works to determine what actually is going to be done. And this sounds like it's largely an infrastructure project. What does it cost to build sidewalks? What does it cost to pave the alley? What does it cost to extend utilities? Because Ray Lynn needs to know those costs so that she can determine whether the increment revenue will be sufficient to pay those. So one thing that needs to be clear is the revenue that would come to the agency from the new area is increment revenue. It's not like there's, you know, unless you want to do bonded indebtedness, you're not going to have any revenue until after the project is built and starts to generate tax increment. And so so the timeframe of having $175,000 available, unless you bond for it, is going to be far down the road after the project's completed, and you begin to start to see that increment paid in property taxes. So there may be a disconnect about exactly how the funding works. And so as far as the timing of it goes, yeah, last meeting there was criticism of the process not being further along. I talked to Stephen immediately after the meeting, and he told me that Mr. Jenke had not been clear following the meeting in October, 2 meetings ago, not clear whether he was to go forward. At least that was the understanding, because there was an environmental assessment that was being done. So it seemed like it was premature at that point to get started.
With all due respect, like I haven't had any communication from your staff, you know, as far as Mr. Waterman until like Thursday of last week.
Yeah, he came away.
And so whether it's indeterminate or not, you know, I feel like Mr. Waterman should have at least reached out to me at some point and said, hey, you know, because we're literally 90 days late.
He came away from that meeting. When I went to him after the meeting last month, I said, hey, there was concern over the fact that we weren't moving forward on this. I can tell you he came away from that meeting not believing that he was instructed to start the process of creating a new site-specific area. that was his understanding from whatever it was. Now, I haven't watched the video or read the minutes. I don't know what instruction was given, but he did not think it was time to go forward. Following the last meeting, was relayed to me that there were questions as to whether Mr. Jinke was going to close on the property. So I think, going forward, if you want us to start a site-specific urban renewal project, we can get that going. It'll start with a declaration by the city council that the area, again, you'll have to define for me the area you want to look at, is blighted, and then we can begin the process that Raylene outlined of working with both Public Works and Finance on a feasibility study.
Mr. Moore?
I think that's what we needed to hear in October. I think to not have any contact with somebody who's there, I think that's kind of my frustration. And if he didn't know that I thought there was something that was going to move forward from that October meeting, and that somebody would be in touch with you. So that was my frustration with it. So if there's a breakdown in communication, I think it's a matter of just picking up the phone, contacting somebody and say, hey, where do we start? Like this, Mr. Genke, tell me, that red word, what'd you call that red word up there?
Indeterminate.
Okay, how would we get that to the next spot to where it's not red and it's a different, like assessing needs, something like that? What would we need to do at this point?
So the conversation that we'd had at that October meeting is that there would be at least an MOU, or a memorandum of understanding, generated by staff or legal, that we'd be able to move, with the understanding that it wouldn't be binding, but that we would move and establish certain timelines, and that we'd move and do things with the intent of establishing an urban rural district sometime after the first of the year.
Okay, so as an MOU would get us kind of off to the races here, what else do you think?
With that, then, my understanding is then the city council's got to get engaged in this. We have to pass that declaration of blight. We need to also figure out the boundaries about what we're doing. So we're going to do a site-specific thing.
Right,
So
to see if it's feasible or not.
to see if it's feasible or not.
Yeah. So I think that's what I was expecting that was going to be done. So I don't know if the chairman, if we need to follow up and, put a hand in someone's back and say, okay, where are we at with this? So that we're not 60 days later going through this right here, because this is a waste of everybody's time, really, and but understanding that, Mr. Hilty, I mean, what can we do going forward? Because everything he said right there, I totally agree with.
Mr. Hilton, before you do, I'd like to interject a couple of thoughts and observations. Lee, you brought it up, and we've talked about it, and I've talked to Mr. Jenkins about it. We do sincerely have to take a broader view of this entire area, not just site-specific.
Right.
And you've mentioned it, we've heard it over and over. This isn't the lot that time forgot. This is the whole neighborhood and the whole part of our city that time forgot.
Yep.
And it definitely needs a shot in the arm.
Yep.
It would be very inconvenient, I think, for city staff to create all these pockets of isolated allocation areas.
Yep.
That's a waste of everybody's time. We ought to be taking a much broader view of the entire neighborhood when we're talking infrastructure and when we're talking amenities and parks and everything that goes with that. So I think the first thing to talk through and make sure that we're clear on is, are we willing to do the heavy lifting of a large plan versus the immediacy of a site-specific plan? I love what you're proposing. I honestly do. I think it's the right fit at that corner, but I don't want to create all of these little pockets that create more and more headaches, bookkeeping-wise and time-wise, when we should be taking and doing the heavy lifting of a broader area. And I'll leave that for comments of my fellow commissioners.
Yeah.
Mr. Moore.
Mr. Chairman, I agree with that. My question is this: how come we're not having these conversations 60 days ago, right after he came and proposed? I think we're letting time go by, and it seems to get more dim. So I'd like to see us that whole area. Gosh, if it wasn't for Caldwell Housing Authority and Councilman Mike Dittmer and his crew going in there and doing some changes, that place would be much different than what it is right now, but I would love to see what that entails on an investment. I'd like to see how that goes. So, I mean, it just, we're telling him one thing in October, and here we are December 9th, and he's got projects that he's gonna sell for $275,000, was that right?
Yep, we'll start.
Not to put you on the spot again, because I'm
Yeah.
sure prices went up in the last 60 days.
Yeah, that's right.
But I mean, there's nothing down there that's under 300,000 that I know of that
Not a thing.
I mean, that's livable. So I'm seeing this need, and I'm saying, okay, can we get creative with this area with one thing to get him off to the races? And we could get 6 homes, is it 6 again?
It's 7.
7 cottages and some affordable living there. And, I mean, that's kind of like a lottery in my view. So that's what I would like to see. I'd like to see us get going,
So you're talking more of a both and
both and.
rather than either or?
Yeah, but I still got to see what this whole thing entails.
Yeah, agreed. Mr. Cole?
And not to throw more work at Ray Lynn, but yeah.
Yeah, so my question would be, can we do these simultaneously?
Mr. Hilty?
That's what we're talking about, right?
Yeah.
You mean a site-specific and a general simultaneously?
Yes.
No, I need to have a boundary.
Well, you know, it sounds like there needs to be, there's 2 different proposals and 2 different tracks. One being a larger one, and then one being site-specific. So there's 2 separate tasks involved in that.
Well, in order to have, we could get the declaration of the larger area and ultimately create a smaller area. We could do that, but you're talking about 2 different feasibility studies that Raylan would have to prepare, because you'd have to look at the larger area, and then you'd also need, we may have more defined projects that are necessary for the site specific. If we want to do a broader area, we'll have to think more broadly about what projects would be important and necessary for the larger area. So you could, I guess, you could look at the site-specific area as subsumed within a larger area, but at some point you're going to have to decide which you're going to do. Or you do 2 different areas.
Ms. Warwick?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, I agree, this whole area needs to be considered blighted, because we all know it is. I drive through it every day, and I see that it's blighted. However, we know how long a feasibility study takes on an area that size. And his project's going to be done, and people are going to be living in it before that feasibility study is done on an area that size. So, you know, I was thinking when we first talked about it, we were going to do a smaller area, do that feasibility study. The boundaries are simple, because, I mean, he's already showed us what the boundaries are. The boundaries are simple, do a feasibility study and get that going. And we need to have the larger conversation about the rest of that whole area. You know, I don't think it's bad to have, you know, a smaller district within a larger one. But I think it would take way too long, and he's already waited 60 days with nothing happening. I think we need to get the ball rolling, and, you know, the boundaries are easy. There's no reason it probably couldn't go before the next city council meeting, I wouldn't think, to say that area is blighted, and then we could go on with creating a plan and feasibility study.
And I guess my comment a little bit around this, and this, you know, looking at the 2 city councilmen that are sitting on this commission today, and at risk of confusing it even further, is maybe there's a conversation that y'all could have with city staff about, you know, delaying the requirements, as far as requiring me to put the sidewalk, you know, replace the sidewalks, because there are sidewalks there, but they're not up to city current specs. You know, having a conversation about delaying paving the alley, because again, there is not a single alley in that north side that is paved. So again, is like, but they are currently making it a requirement. So maybe that buys a little bit of time and postpones the work that I'm asking for. Still enables me to go sell this project. And then once this district is put into place, those funds go directly that way.
Mr. Doty?
I'm not sure about a delay. Clearly, there's ordinances and rules and laws about that, and I would guess you probably wouldn't get your certificate of occupancy without those being done, and that's where I guess the question comes back to you. We may decide for this to be a bigger area, or we may not. That's up in the air, yet to be determined. Certainly, we do need the assessments to know if that's worth risking the tax money on, especially that we need 30 more police officers in the city. However, the smaller single one is a delayed to payment to you, like Mr. Hilty mentioned. Until you build it, you're not probably gonna get any, or very little money back, right?
Yeah.
And so you would you'd be dependent on yourself versus a larger area where it's gonna take a lot longer, it sounds like, to even start discussing that, check out the fiscal impact to the budget, and then determine if we can put money into a pot, which would still be a whole nother tax cycle before any of that money would go into that pot. So it's really, do you want to pay yourself back at some time in who knows how many X number of years? Or do you want to wait however long it's going to take to start a serious discussion about this, so.
Just leave it in your hands. My preference obviously is to be able to be reimbursed on that, you know, with appropriate speed, you know, because like, again, as I'm doing this work mostly because of a belief that we need to be able to enable people to get on the property ladder, to start to build equity and whatnot, and we're not doing it, you know. And so I'd be, you know, if this body decides to go forward with a spot district and, you know, with the smaller district that encompasses just my parcel, that's fantastic, and I'll be happy with that. And, you know, based upon my forecasting of what the property value would generate, like, it ends up being, you know, 5 to 7 years roughly, is my guess. And I'll be fine with that, you know. But at the same time, I also know that, you know, I have about a half dozen projects inside of this that, you know, I don't want to come back and, you know, like every single month and ask, hey, I've got another one, and I've got another one, and I've got another one. And, you know, because it's a waste of your time, it's a waste of mine, it's a waste of, you know, staff time.
Mr. Moore?
Mr. Chairman, is there, and this is a question for Mr. Hilty, excuse me, is there some sort of a reimbursement that we could work on, that we could put together for Lee?
Yeah, I think what you're referring to, Commissioner Moore, is a TIF agreement, and you've seen those before as well. And so the way that it works is that the project is built, including whatever features would need to be reimbursed. And generally we look at the infrastructure because that's what urban renewal dollars are available for. There is some additional stuff we could look at, but generally it's the infrastructure. So he would build it all, and let's say it costs $175,000, and then we'd have a TIF agreement that says the revenue, the tax increment revenue generated, sounds like there's been at least some rough math done, over the next 5 to 7 years would go back to reimburse the developer for those costs. But it's not, I just wanted to make sure everybody understood that the day after this is created, there's not going to be $175,000 available to pay for this or to reimburse.
And that's not my expectation. That was never my expectation, that there's this pot of money sitting there, and, you know, I just get to show up and y'all write me a check, like, you know. So
Lee, how does that sound?
great, let's do it. You know, delegaces, as they say, you know.
Mr. Hilty, what action do we need to take to begin this process?
Well, I really need to know if it's site-specific and you want to do a site-specific area, then we can go to council.
I think that's the general
Okay.
will.
All right,
of the,
we will
commission.
start that process, and then once we have that, that site-specific designation made, which I'm assuming will happen, then we can start with the feasibility study, and that'll be, sounds like, you know, perhaps into February. You start after the first of the year.
Yeah.
Once that's done, we should be in position to craft the plan. The plan needs to go to the Urban Renewal Agency and then ultimately to the City Council.
Okay. And we, not to put you on the spot or anything, because it's a busy time of year, but we would probably like to hear a progress report at our next meeting, just where we're at in the process, and just to be able to keep track of things.
Yeah, certainly. Chances are we could have this in front of the City Council a week from tonight, just simply for the declaration, although I don't know if it's going to speed the overall process. If we might push it till, the first meeting in January. But we'll see. That'd be the first step, and then followed by the feasibility study.
Thank you. Ms.
And
Warwick?
then, while we're talking, this is not an action item. I'm certainly asking you to take any action, but if that's the instruction from the agency, we can proceed in that fashion. The one thing, Lee, that would be needed, and maybe you've already produced this, and maybe you've already delivered it, but it would be a list of all those projects.
Of the budget items that I'm asking for that 100, yes, that was provided to Rob McDonald and.
Oh, good, okay,
Yeah, and I believe Mr. Mr. Waterman has a copy of that.
okay.
So, that's been there. So,
Okay. Thank you, Lee.
thank you all, appreciate y'all time.
Are not listed on the agenda. Okay. Brings us to the consent calendar. I believe that there is an amendment to our agenda also.
Mr. Chair,
Ms. Warwick?
under old business, action item number 1, we need to move that to our next meeting as I don't believe the landscaping has been completed on that project at Cleveland and Kimball.
Okay, very good. We have a motion by Ms. Warwick,
Second.
second by Mr. Doty. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. This brings us to the consent calendar. Do we have a motion as to the disposition of our consent calendar?
Mr. Chair,
Ms. Warwick?
I move we approve the consent calendar as amended.
We have a motion by Ms. Warwick. We have a second? Second by Mr. Doty. Would the secretary call the roll?
Commissioner Warwick?
Yes.
Commissioner Doty?
Yes.
Commissioner Moore?
Yes.
Commissioner Allgood?
Yes.
Commissioner Cole?
Yes.
Commissioner Porter?
Yes.
Commissioner Brooks?
Yes.
Very good. That brings us to our update reports, and our first is from Destination Caldwell. Welcome, Danae.
Appreciate your time tonight, commissioners. Let's see. Great. Okay, I'm just giving a quick update, and it's just going to be a good old-fashioned show and tell with our signage plan. Just some brief history about this. So 6 years ago in 2018, and even before that, we had Roger Brooks come up with a plan for downtown Caldwell. It was a 62-point action plan, and a wayfinding plan was a part of that. I think I've got some. One of my predecessors is in the room, and she could probably give this presentation better than I can, but this was originally a part of that action plan, and so the signs are here today, 6 years later, so we're excited to get this started. I gave a presentation to council several weeks ago, and in that presentation I stated that over 550,000 guests came into the BID last year. And so a wayfinding plan is to help those guests navigate efficiently and effectively in downtown. It tells them landmarks, it's a branded signage plan. And so as you know, Caldwell has about 73,000 residents, so that 550,000, they need to know like where are the neat things in our city and what's interesting, and they need gateway signage and all sorts of things. So that's a part of this plan today. A good wayfinding plan reduces confusion and improves efficiency. It creates a positive user experience for those 550,000 plus guests. It also includes brand reinforcement. And so on some of our signage, you'll see a logo that is similar to the City of Caldwell's logo, as well as integrates Destination Caldwell's agriculture. Okay. Sorry, so the parking signage is already up. I reported on that a couple months ago. You'll see that. It's up in downtown. This is a sign that you see before you, the 48 by 60 high-pressure laminate signs, and they are for motorists, so thus the large height of them. I had to have Corey, our facilities manager, carry this in with me today, and I hope I can leave it overnight because I need to come back with him tomorrow and get it, if that's okay with you. You'll see the map and the locations that these will go into across downtown. And all of these signs are here, and we're housing them at the street department. This is our new post system. So when we got into the plan, we realized that the posts that we have downtown are not wind and weight bearing effective for these large signs. So we ordered a new post system. These are our banners Currently, a lot of them are up in downtown. We got those up before Winter Wonderland, but there's some that still need to be posted because they need a post. They just don't have a post in the location. So these are just for pedestrians. You'll see one to the west of us. It shows where the Densho Garden, the police department, and City Hall is. So you'll see some of these up, but we have more to go. We also went with a banner system. It was recommended by Don Koslick, who was our planner on the signage plan, because so much is changing in downtown. So these will be more cost-effective to replace. Like even during the time when we were implementing the signage plan, you all moved into what we have known as the TVCC College Building. This wasn't City Hall a year ago. These are directional arms. So double-sided, these will go on the steel post. There'll be several of them per post that you see, and they'll point in the right directions. Also a pedestrian walking part of our signage plan. We also have the locations of where these will go. So we have an entertainment district, the theater. There are all sorts of landmarks into downtown that we hope won't change. This is the secondary motorist information, so those are also here. And you'll see in the exteriors and the gateways as a part of our plan. Our sign fabricator was Trademark. The graphic designer on it was Don Gira, and our planner was Don Koslick with Vitruvian Planning, who's excellent. And there's costs associated with each of these signage plans, so we spent about $132,000. I just met with Paul Oslip from Streets Department on November 25th, and we have come up with an installation plan for the posts. And we can currently install some of the phases of the signage where there is an existing post that is weight and weight bearing enough for some of the signs to go up, but not all of them. Those are our signage counts. And then just some unstarted wayfinding phases. We actually have a plan for the business directory. There's a kiosk. If we got to that phase, our board is working on a video board for the stage that would also double as a downtown business directory. So we have a plan for that. And then our downtown gateway signage, we didn't get to that as a part of the plan. We have to work with ITD on it. And then some of the secondary motorists we didn't get to. Any questions for me?
We have some questions for Danae. Julie? Oh. So what's the total bill at this point?
$132,000.
Okay. And we allotted $245,000 to the program?
Yes.
Well done.
Yeah. Yeah, we'd love to get to some of the other phases. You just have to work with ITD, and it's not as straightforward. And we figured we came up with a better solution that we could update easily with the downtown business directory video board, where the most traffic is on the plaza.
Very good. Mr. Allgood?
I believe Commissioner Brooks was ahead of me. Oh, no, okay, I'm sorry, I didn't want to cut him off if he was ahead. Danae, this is just awesome. I have been very impatient about seeing this come up, because I just really feel like it's important, and I was down here for the tree lighting and the thousands of people, and lots of people are not from here. They don't have a clue where things are happening, and I just feel like this is a real win.
Yeah.
Thank you for all your efforts.
Yeah, no, thank you to Sabrina, my predecessors in the room. She really got this plan starting, and then I inherited it and got to see it through to its almost completion. So just appreciate the good work of people who have gone before me and got to do kind of the fun part.
Mr. Moore?
Danae, I second what Councilman Allgood just said. I think it's a great area, and you got to be able to find it. Got a weird question, an oddball question. I'm seeing more graffiti in the city. Has anything ever been destroyed? Anything been attacked?
You know, we have a pretty good camera system in the plaza area. I can't think of anything really that was graffitied, like on the part of the property that we manage, but I do know, graffiti is an issue, and I've seen some posting about it in social media, and I know the city has a plan for that, and we've been able to let downtown businesses know through our text system, if you do see graffiti, that we have a third party that handles that within 24 hours, I believe. So yeah, thankfully, no, we are worried about the giving machines being vandalized or some of those things, but we haven't had an issue.
Yeah, thank you for coming here tonight and putting that on and telling us all about it.
Yeah.
Thank you, Danae.
Yes, can I leave the big sign and we'll come back tomorrow? Is that going to be in the way?
Sure.
Okay. Otherwise, I might ask Councilor Doty to help me bring that up to my car.
Thanks again. Second update report is on our RC contractors. I don't see Derek in the room this evening. So, Rob, do you have something for us?
Mr. Chairman and Commission, I had some discussions today with Mr. Jenkins, and we were talking about this project specifically. Derek Cooper has been attempting to develop this property for a little bit of time now, and different than other projects that we've seen that have had delays that have not been city responsibility. This one has had a couple delays, and I just wanted to lay those out for you briefly so that the commission understands what's going on there. One of the delays was the alley work and trying to get the power underground. Engineering staff has been working very diligently with Idaho Power and with all of the utilities that are in the alley to try to get the power poles underground that are in the alley adjacent to this development. It has been a very difficult feat because of all the utility companies that are in there. And they're making headway, and that project is supposed to get started probably early spring. And so that would be the alley portion, and that's there's a large power pole that's almost in direct conflict with the building that's supposed to be built on this parcel. And so that's been a problem, and we've been trying to push that forward as best we can. The bigger issue is that last year we were awarded a bridge grant to replace the Indian Creek Bridge on Kimball. And that bridge is deficient. And if you've been underneath there, it's been built in different decades, and there's different parts of construction under there, and so it needs to be replaced. We were funded to get that replaced, and the preliminary design kicked off. We didn't really know when construction was going to happen because usually these projects aren't quick. But apparently this one's all funded, and so they already have a design timeline and a construction timeline. And it turns out the construction timeline for this bridge to replace this bridge on Kimball directly also conflicts with the timeline that Mr. Cooper was going to start on his project. The bridge project, again, it's right up adjacent to the parcel, and so there's no way that the bridge project can happen and the development on the parcel can happen at the same time. And so, in working with Mr. Jenkins, we've been trying to figure out how best to deal with this, and from my perspective, it's an unfortunate situation that the developer's in where he's ready to get started now, and because of other conflicts that we can't control, he's not able to. There's no way to defer the bridge project because of the funding, and it's all federal funding through LTAC. By asking them to defer the bridge project or construction, we could possibly lose the funding for that. And so it puts us in a tough situation, and I think the request would be that maybe there's some leniency granted to Mr. Cooper and his development to allow it to delay until some of these other issues on the peripheral of his project can get addressed. So I was just here to talk about the bridge, but I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
That is, it sounds like spectacularly bad timing.
Yes, we couldn't have planned it worse.
We didn't plan it. Mr. Moore.
You go ahead.
Well, no, I'm just, so you said a timeline for the bridge is set.
Correct.
What is that timeline?
They are supposed to, I believe they are supposed to start in April, and they are planning to be done in November before Winter Wonderland kicks off.
Will that close Blaine?
No.
No.
It may close one lane on Blaine, There may be a taper where maybe the right-hand lane on Blaine is closed off so they can do the work right up there at the abutment. But Blaine is supposed to remain open.
And so this is worse news for RRC developers than it is for us, because now they're sitting on their hands. Is that accurate?
Yeah, that's correct, and Mr. Jenkins may be able to speak a little bit more to that. He's had direct conversations with Mr. Cooper, and so I think there are concerns along those lines as well because of tenants that he has and that he may not be able to retain if his project's delayed. And so our objective, I think that I think there's a couple different facets here to the project, but we just want to make sure that, I know Urban Renewal has been pushing to get this project done, and now there has to be some kind of leniency on time frame, otherwise it's just not possible to construct.
Mr. Moore?
Mr. Chairman, I think the Urban Renewal has been understanding of the issues that he's had in the time. I didn't think there was an issue with any delays. I mean, especially where Mr. McDonald's explaining everything to us crystal clear. Totally understand that. I mean, our hands are tied. My question is this: why are city employees reporting for Mr. Cooper? Mr. Chairman, Mr. Hilty, why is he not here? And I asked him in January of this year if he would report on these, and he's not. When's the last time he's been here?
It's been several months.
Chairman, Commissioner Moore, thank you for that question. I did inform Mr. Cooper that we would share this information because it is a city-related issue. Mr. Cooper is actually out of state, and he'd let me know that having someone from his team come in his absence, they wouldn't be able to explain the details that were just provided to you. So I just let him know, that maybe that was on me, but I let him know that because it was a city impact with this bridge project, let's let the city take this responsibility to explain this to the commissioners in the detail that was provided.
I understand that. I just think it puts city employees in a different predicament. I think whether it's him or his project manager or his attorney, I think somebody needs to be here so that we know that he knows that we're fully aware of what's going on. I don't know why we keep doing this. I really don't, and I don't understand why we can't have Mr. Cooper here. And if he's out of state quite a bit, I get that. But somebody in his project, in his operation, should be able to report on this, or at least show up. That's all I have.
Mr. Doty?
Mr. Chair, thank you. How far behind are they? Or what was their original contract? So now we have a city project going that's delaying them, but we've been asking about this. So is he behind his timeline to begin with before we even decided we were getting the money to replace the bridge? How far behind is he currently?
That's a good question, Commissioner Doty. I don't know exactly when the RFP was awarded to Mr. Cooper, but I can tell you that there have been some objective impacts here. The first one was related to power, of course, and we were able to mitigate some of that, but in a nutshell, definitely was certainly a delay. Idaho Power, getting that all situated for the undergrounding of power in that alley directly impacted his project. And those were objective circumstances. This bridge is another one that unfortunately came at bad timing for him.
And I'm all good for that. What I'm saying is that sounds reasonable to delay it. I just want to make sure that when we're keeping up with these projects that now he's delayed by a city project, but was he delayed in meeting his timelines before there was any interference? And maybe he was. I don't remember all the details and all the timelines, right? But if he didn't get it done when the timeline he was supposed to, and now the city is holding him back, it's really not the city. If he should have got it done, and I'm not saying he should have, I want to make that very clear because I don't know the timelines either. But this is what we have to be aware of and keep very close track of when people say they're going to accomplish something and then what delays that. And I think we need some sort of recording history on that. We've had a presentation about that because now we're all just guessing, was it us, was it him, did he miss a date, was it us that missed the date? You see what I'm getting at? A reasonable delay is a bridge being taken out in one bill, clearly.
Yeah.
But would he be in this predicament or not, depending on what he did or did not do? And that's just my point.
I
Clearly
appreciate those
it's going to be
comments.
delayed, but because there's a bridge. But whose fault is that, so.
I appreciate those comments. He does have hundreds of thousands into this project already, just because he's pulled in the sewer line and, you know, some of those things, and it is unfortunate. He is eager to get started, and I think there's some frustration brewing just because he does have tenants that are ready to get into that building as well. So I know that he's probably equally as frustrated with this process, unfortunately. Thank you.
Ms. Warwick?
As I recall, correct me if I'm wrong, Stephen or Rob, wasn't there some water issues there too? That caused a problem? He couldn't start when he needed to start because we had water issues due to the proximity of the creek. So didn't that,
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Warwick, there wasn't a water issue with his service, because his service to the old building was in the alley, and it's too close to the sewer line, and so it can't be a public line, but it needs to be a public line because it needs to service fire suppression. And so there was an issue with that, and we worked with him to get all that sorted out. So, yeah, that was just another thing that we had to work through that was unusual. And it's typical of downtown where you have a lot of utilities and you're trying to cram everything into an alley.
I was talking Indian Creek water. Didn't we have a problem with infiltration there? And there had to be some special groundwork done
Yeah,
because of that? That
I
was the
apologize, yes, I'm
initial
thinking
delay,
of a
right?
different
I mean, we got to go back to all the delays,
Yeah, so there was a basement in the existing building,
right?
and when the building was demolished, there was a contractor that was hired to backfill all of that, and they ran into a big water problem when they were down deep, and so it took them a while to get the backfill in correctly. And then there were some old footings down there, and so we were working with Mr. Cooper's development to figure out if we had to pull all of those footings out or if they could still build, leaving some of those footings that were down pretty deep in the ground. And then we had to make sure everything was backfilled and compacted properly so that when he came in to build, there wasn't going to be a problem with his structure. So, yeah, there's been a lot of delays,
There
let's
has,
say.
and going back to, even if Mr. Cooper could appear by Zoom, if he's out of state, Zoom works, and I would love to have him sit here and tell us all the things that delayed him, because I know there's been a lot of them, a lot of them. And he's probably really frustrated at this point, nothing that can be done, but probably really frustrated, and it's costing him money, and I think we'd like to know that, we'd like to know that. I don't think it's anybody's fault, because things just happen, but if we could hear from him, yeah, this happened, this happened, this happened, he's gonna have a better recollection probably than any of us on everything he's gone through on that property, which, if we heard it from him directly, even if it was by Zoom, I think it would be great.
Sure.
Mr. Moore?
Mr. Chairman, so a question for Mr. Hilty. The original conference calls that we had with him, when we kind of picked this back up and started talking to Mr. Cooper beginning, middle of this year, I mean, he's had some legitimate issues with the process, so I don't think he's been too far behind, but nevertheless, we're in a partnership together, correct? We're partnering together, and I just don't understand why our partner isn't showing up to tell us this stuff, or somebody from his company isn't showing up to just tell us, because I know Rob has specifics that we totally understand, and we get that, but I've got to hear that from the other partner in this partnership. So, and we're saying this all the time, and Stephen, thanks for communicating, but I think that puts you in a pretty tough position somewhere down the road if there's any changes. So I don't know why we want to do that. I think we need to hear it from somebody from his company.
Thank you for those comments.
One more thing, Mr. Chair, if I may. And Stephen, put it on us, make us the bad guys. When they call you or email you, say, hey, they've told me I'm not supposed to be your spokesman anymore. They want to hear directly from you. That way that, make us the bad guys. It's fine. We're used to it.
Thank you, Julie. Brings us to our next update report with Sean. You're looking pretty good tonight. You're here.
I'm here. I still don't have much more of an update other than we're meeting with engineers. We had a meeting since last time, a roundtable meeting with the city. Chairman Porter attended, just working through engineer stuff and getting our stuff ready to get to permitting. So on track and ready to go, but engineers, So I don't know if you have any questions.
I'll just say real quickly, sitting in on the meeting, everybody's excited for the project, both city staff and the folks that you're working with too, just
Yeah, and
ready to go.
we're excited to have you at the meeting so
Oh,
that you guys can keep
appreciate that.
informed on what's going on.
Ms.
So-
Worrell?
Mr. Chair, so what is your outlook? What is your plan for break ground? What is your date for that, do you
In
think?
March.
March.
Yeah.
And was that in your original timeline? Are you?
No, it wasn't our original timeline because we had to do a few things and then we got to the point where we'd be building in Winter Wonderland right here, so.
Yeah, that would be good. Okay, so
So-
March, and you think you're gonna make that even with all these various issues you've had with breaking
Yeah.
ground in March?
Yeah, I don't think it's gonna be an issue.
Great.
We're not really having issues, it's just we're designing
The
stuff.
process,
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Moore?
Sean, thanks for showing up every time, and you give us a good report. We don't always know exactly what it is, but I sure appreciate you telling us.
Yeah, no, I appreciate you showing up as well.
Yeah, right?
So then I got somebody to talk to.
There you go.
But, any other questions?
Don't believe so. Thank you, Sean.
All right, thank you.
Much appreciated. Brings us to Base Layer LLC.
Good to see you all this evening. I received an email from Miguel Gotti this morning, and I apologize for not receiving it earlier. I would have passed that along and made sure that you had it in front of you, but I'll read it for the sake of just clearing up where they're at. So he did mention in his email they're close to wrapping up the project. He shared some photos with me, aerials. The weather has been our biggest issue with getting our requirements in place for the ITD inspection. We have been on the schedule for striping, but with the moisture and cold temperatures have not been able to perform the work. We will remain on the schedule and attempt to perform the work as soon as the weather permits. Once we catch a window for striping, we can schedule our final inspection with ITD to get this project wrapped up. So he did mention in his email that he's been working with the city to define the configuration and alignment of the future public streets and utilities through the site. That is true. Rob McDonald and I met with Miguel and his team this past Friday, where we did cover the configuration of the collector road that will navigate through his site. So they said we hope to be discussing next steps and implementation with the URA board in the near future. Thank you.
Mr. Moore?
I go by that project every other day, and it's coming along, and yeah, what a muddy mess, and they harvested all the corn out there and everything, so I appreciate you reading that email from them. I know they're busy, so, but that documented email there explains it to me, so thank you.
Absolutely.
And they're busy.
Any other questions? Okay,
Great, thank you.
Mr. Allgood?
I just have a quick question for whomever, whether it be Ray Lynn or Stephen or yourself. As public roads, as Mr. Jenkins referenced, the collector roads and things get built, where does that money come from? Is that city coffers? Is that URA coffers? Is that developer? Who pays for the main roads through that property? And is that something that we would talk about in our 5-year plan? Where do those fundings come from?
Ray Lynn?
So it can come from a multiple, but because it is on that direct property, I believe it would be in the developer that would be responsible for those. However, I know that the discussion has been whether URA would contribute some of those funding. And so I think that's a discussion up for hand if that's a project that URA would like to contribute, or the city, so.
Yeah, and I know that has been a common practice to discuss who's gonna do all of those as we move forward. I know this is early in this situation and that's expensive, but, okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Chris. Next update report is from 7th and Main. Do we have Dean on the line? Very good.
You guys hear me okay?
Yeah, welcome, Dean.
We can't see you guys in our video side, so sorry we were unable to make it last month. As I have said before, it's important to make sure that we keep all of our partners informed of what's going on. So we are here. I have Michael McHugh joining us from Pivot North Architects to give you guys some visuals in terms of what we have been working on. Before he dives into that, I just want to let you know we do have but we continue to engage both businesses and brokers in the area to see if there is continued interest. We'll keep you guys informed, but we continue to move the design process forward, and I'll let Michael McHugh kind of dive into that information, give you an update of where we stand with that, and then I'll jump back in and give you some timeline information. Michael?
Yeah, thanks for having me. So let me share my screen here. Alright. So kind of, this was a package we put together for Dean in the Chase a few weeks back, just to go down this retail office point adjacent to the river there on Main Street, or the creek. And these were just some precedent ideas about materiality, form, scale, I guess a little bit. Maybe not this one so much, but and I can tie that back into the previous design that maybe some of you have seen and where we're coming from. But so just jumping into kind of a plan, this is the existing multifamily to the page right here, Main Street to the top, and then the creek would be kind of down page south, so to the bottom here. We are proposing kind of keeping some breadth or space between that multifamily building. I believe our site comes all the way pretty close adjacent to this their current property, but allowing for some space for visibility through permeability to the creek, as well as opportunity for outdoor active space that is both shared by the residents here as well as the tenants in this space. We have two concepts at the ground floor, depending on how this adjacent parcel or plaza, street, thoroughfare happens. Did I hear a question?
No, go ahead.
No. Okay, sorry. And so anyway, just currently just breaking it down into two retail spaces, and as Dean said, you know, we're working with some potential tenants to what the really need is spatially for that, but still trying to really activate that creek side, so you can see at the ground floor kind of this covered patio element, and then space out to the courtyard as well, and how you might be able to function. The second option is literally kind of flipping it again, depending on how we want to activate this, having the retail spaces more on that courtyard space, and kind of facing that. And as you know, in the development adjacent, the multifamily, there is kind of this avenue that takes the Indian Creek Plaza alley that kind of runs through and directs that through that building. And we're trying to pick up on that with its adjacency here as well. And then there's a small office lobby, so if the commercial or office space becomes a thing, you'd have that kind of at-grade lobby, elevators, open stair to kind of an upper floor, if you will, of space around 7,000 square feet with a small patio that looks out onto the creek as well. So the scale of this building is definitely kind of, you know, from the scale of the adjacent multifamily, but then coming down to a slightly smaller, more intimate scale. And you can see this is just a quick look of the conceptual elevations, north elevation along Main Street. This is the elevation along kind of that courtyard space between the multifamily and the office / commercial retail space. And then this would be the elevation along the creek base, and this would be kind of recessed back, so you kind of have almost this portico or this colonnade. And this is where, trying to tie it back a little bit to what was previously proposed. Obviously, this is only a 2-story building as opposed to, I think, what we were originally shown, which was probably a 4-story. Like, I think it was ground floor retail with 3 stories of residential above. But there was some massing that was kind of happening in that previous one, which is kind of this upper story portion that has kind of a stronger base. So we're trying to play off that a little bit with this concept. And then these are just some images from kind of Main Street, the main across from that that aligns with the river the bridge that goes across the creek. Looking back at this is the multifamily that is currently there. This is looking down Main Street towards where the courtyard would be. Again, just a couple more views from, there's the bridge that's currently there that goes across the creek, kind of looking back. And then this is that covered portion that you can kind of see it here a little bit where the current path around the creek kind of bends into where this would be. Again, kind of the openness of the upper floor looking out onto that as a space. And I can jump into the model as well, just so you can see.
Could you just jump back? Sorry, could you go back?
Yep, yeah.
To the first floor plan really quick on the, I think
Yeah,
it's slide
sure.
number 3 with the retail.
Yep.
Kind of
Yeah.
the next one. Yeah, so I just wanted to point out in conversations with the retailers, they are extremely interested about this open courtyard concept and to be able to have active space both moving inside and outside into those areas, drawing people down from other areas either along the creek or along Main or passing right through underneath the Tillian to this space. They really like the idea of this kind of cozy feel between two buildings, but open onto Main Street and then open to the creek, that allows them to almost get like a living room off of the kitchen being the retail space where people can kind of converse and hang out and engage their retail front, again, food-focused retail front. But they're very excited about that kind of buffered concept between the buildings. Thanks, Vicky.
Yeah, certainly. And yeah, again, just to kind of get that three-dimensional element of it. So this is, again, trying to create this, really ground the building, if you will, and then have kind of this interplay of the rhythm of a colonnade of sorts that creates this element along that creek front, as you can see. And again, this is kind of the scale of the adjacent building, and then as you kind of come around, you get kind of this lower scale. And then we imagine whatever gets developed over here is kind of the conversation of how you activate this space and how these talk to each other, and what this really wants to be. But that's where we're at currently. And if you have any questions or comments, please live here.
Questions?
And I might have missed this, but this is proposed where again?
It's directly west of the Tillian.
Oh, okay.
And sorry I wasn't able to be there in person. It's a family company holiday party this evening, so I pulled myself away.
Yeah, no, I have no thanks. You're reporting directly, so thank you. Okay. Yeah, no, that's all the question I have.
Okay. Mr. Allgood?
So I understand this is very conceptual at this point, but based on what you're showing, are you getting interest? I mean, is this a possibility, or is this just kind of an idea at this point?
No, there's definitely getting legs on the ground floor retail. The second floor office space, I'm not getting a lot of attraction, a lot of interest for that, but we'll continue to push. I'm very excited at the two concepts that are going to go on the ground floor. I think they would complement other things that are happening in downtown. Two very, very good restaurateurs, and I'm not going to say their names, but you guys have seen the package before in terms of who we've been talking to. They are still very much involved and very interested. So again, we're doing this design from the inside and the outside. I want to make sure that the space works for them internally. We want to make sure the visual looks amazing from the outside. So hopefully within the next couple of months, we'll be able to come back and give you more insight once we actually have agreements signed with these parties to tell you who they are and how it's going to work. And hopefully during the same amount of time, we can come back and say at least we have interest in the upper floor, if not someone actually secured to take the upper floor.
So, Dean, on the Tillian ground floor retail space, are we good there? Have you got that spoken for?
We have one space left, so as that kind of internal alleyway goes, there's one small space that's still available that's about 1,500 square feet. I think because of its location, kind of inboard, not on a prominent corner, it's made it a little tougher. We've had a lot of LOIs in terms of interest going there, but haven't been able to put someone on the line and bring them in to actually build the space out. The recent discussion we've had is about maybe we actually build the space out to a vanilla shell so that someone walks in the space, they can actually say, oh, now I know what we're talking about. Visually, it's kind of hard to go and walk in there and see everything open to structure and ground floor just being gravel and so on. So that's what we've discussed. The other two spaces, the hard corner on 7th and Main, and then of course along the creek, is active. Hopefully you guys have had the opportunity to go and enjoy pizza and wine there. And then the other space, they, I believe, are in for permit or are about to be in for permit on the 7th and Main side. So the two hard corners and the two prominent corners have been spoken for, and leased, leases are in place. And one's open, hopefully the other one's open in the spring. So activity still remains good. We haven't been pushing too hard on that inboard space because we've been very focused on the residential portions of the property.
Thank you, I appreciate that.
Yep.
Ms. Warwick?
Mr. Chair, thanks, Dean, for showing up. I think it's a real attractive building. I like how you've taken advantage of some open space between the two buildings. It kind of heightens the appeal of the creek there. So I think what you've designed there is really good for that particular site.
Thank you. Thank you, McHugh.
Mr. Moore?
Mr. Chairman, Dean, I had pizza and wine in the back part of their Tilly, and that was a great experience there. So thank you very much. That's a nice area there. The project that you're proposing here, that top floor, let me ask you this, and I've got my own ideas and theories, but you're doing this for a living and you're out there and you see it. What's stopping the process of just filling that thing up once it goes up? What, with leases?
Are you saying build it per spec without having someone in tow? Or are you saying what's holding us back on getting the interest right now?
Both.
I think the price point, a new product in downtown, and what we're competing with existing product in the general area is probably the biggest hindrance. What we found attraction with similar projects to this one is actually bringing a tenant in early and working with them on a potential ownership structure. So actually having them sitting next to us as an owner in the project and be able to create that space very specific for their needs. So that's the point that we're at. If we get to a point where we can't get enough traction, then we'll heavy market it. But my risk is the assumptions on what someone can rent in downtown Caldwell for office space compared to what it's going to cost us to build this are probably not in line. We're probably a fair amount per square foot of rent difference to take the risk to build this space without having someone on board early and really customizing it. Again, fingers crossed, hopefully we bring someone in who wants, part of or all of that floor, and we build the space, kind of a build to suit specific for their needs.
Dean, let me ask you this. What do you see market conditions here? If you had a crystal ball, what do you see this thing looking like here the next year? This market?
For all product types?
Correct.
I think that downtown Caldwell is well positioned for multifamily as we're there. We are stabilized. We're at 95-ish% right now. Thanks to Winter Wonderland putting a lot of people back into downtown and seeing what we've done over the past year or two. So I think that the multifamily product that we have there will remain solid. It'll be a good product long term. The office market, I think, is going to be tough, except for maybe specialty types of office, so creative office space. Those office users that don't want to commute into downtown. You have a couple right now that have a satellite office in downtown Caldwell that don't want to go to Boise or to 10 Mile or other areas because they like the culture there. Retail, I think, will continue to strive. I think downtown Caldwell has a very good demand for traffic, both foot traffic and others coming through. Positioning it well, again, in the summertime, there's plenty of activity. The wintertime, because of Winter Wonderland, there's plenty of activity. It's those shoulder seasons that I've heard from the retailers for this project and the others that they're worried about. So if I was to guess, and if my crystal ball was clear, I would say ground floor retail will continue to be in demand.
Okay, thank you for that update there. I appreciate that oversight. My one last question here, and I'll let you go. So what would you ask, whether it's a Christmas present from the URA, what would you ask from us on this particular project? What would you like to see, or what could we do?
If there are interests in trying to do something on that second floor that support the project in terms of an office use or other use that, honestly, we haven't been able to come forward with, say, medical or others, if there are folks talking to the URA that would say, yeah, this is what we would want in downtown, this is the location we're interested in, this is the project we're interested in for that second floor activation, that would be helpful. Outside of that, again, I hope I come back in 30 to 60 days and tell you guys the ground floor is, leased or very close to being leased 100%. So we're really just working on what the second floor is going to be used for.
Thank you, Dean.
Yep.
Any other questions for Dean? Very good. Well, thanks for checking in with us this evening. We look forward to seeing you again next month.
Thank you, guys. Happy holidays.
Thank you, Mike. Our next update report is from Wolfpack, and Ms. Smith is here. Welcome, Carrie.
I almost joined online and then I was able to make it because your meeting ran late. So thank you for running your meeting late. I have two updates. We did receive a lead through Ophelia. Huge appreciation to the work that they're doing. And we have a contractor working on a bid for that development right now. So in addition to what Dean said, it is going to come down to the economics of what it costs to build out. And we're really hopeful though. So it was a good offer and we are really hopeful that those construction costs come in for the build out where we need them to. So that's update number one. And then update number two, the grass lot, we've continued negotiations with one group on a development proposal, which I can't say more than that. And then the other one, we did reach out to a prior lead and offered the site for development on that lead, and we have not heard back from them, but I feel like we're making really good progress. And then I don't know why, but I feel very compelled to tell you guys that I used to sit in both of their positions, and I would remind you, 8 years ago, on Dean's site was the very first time that an RFP was accepted by the Urban Renewal District for that site. It has gone through multiple iterations. Even the site for Derek Cooper, you guys are in control of those parcels because they were hard to develop, because they had negative values. The site that I'm developing on Charlie, they are not easy sites to develop. If they were, you guys would not have them and they would be developing on their own. And that being said, these guys have a special relationship with them because you guys issued RFPs and they worked hand in hand on development proposals, and they've built relationships with them. All the other developers are going through a different process through planning and zoning, and it's very different. So I appreciate wanting the developers here. I just have sat on the other side, and those guys are taking a chance on these parcels. They have multiple projects now that I've been on the development side. It's very hard to come sometimes and sit for a couple of hours, and I do understand the incentive you've given them, but, and I'm not trying to make excuses, but there's just so much going on in this that I'm appreciative of the grace you've given Wolfpack and for us, and what you guys are doing for Caldwell, and I appreciate your time on this board, and thank you.
Thank you, Carrie. Mr. Moore?
Well, I think it deserves a response.
Do it.
And I can appreciate what you're saying. In my years of finance, the ones that show up are the ones that complete the projects. And the ones that don't show up, but yet they still kind of show up, this one I haven't seen in I don't know how many months. So I totally understand what you're saying there, and I get that. And thanks for coming here tonight and reporting on that. I mean, that tells me that we have a finger on the pulse and something's going on. And it's all documented.
Agreed.
Yeah. So thank you, Carrie.
Totally.
Don't see
Thank
any other
you.
questions or comments, so thank you, Carrie.
Have a great night.
Okay, that brings us to our old business, which we removed from our agenda. takes us to our first item of new business. It's an action item to consider invoices for payment as recommended by our treasurer.
So, good evening again. Got a couple invoices, $19,772.59 for the September-October Fair Expo building improvements, $18,900 for the December economic development contributions, $6,800 for the November attorney services, and $726,171.69 for Project 12. Total of $771. Let me start that over. That's a mouthful. $771,644.28.
Any questions? Do you have a motion to,
Question.
question?
Mr. Chair, are we close on the Canyon County to being done, and are you reconciled now?
So I did get an email from Diana Center. She said she'll know details tomorrow and will follow up with me. She does not believe there's a discrepancies on the numbers in regards to the URA. And if she needs, I'd let her know if she needed information from me, that I'd be happy to send it, so.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, do we have a motion as to
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Allgood?
I move that we accept the invoices as presented.
Okay, we have
Second.
a motion by Mr. Allgood, a second by Mr. Doty. Would the secretary call the roll?
Commissioner Allgood,
Yes.
Commissioner Cole,
Yes.
Commissioner Porter,
Yes.
Commissioner Brooks,
Yes.
Commissioner Warwick,
Yes.
Commissioner Doty,
Yes.
Commissioner Moore.
Yes.
Okay, that takes us to our treasurer report to approve the monthly cash reconciliation report.
So the first report that I have for you is just in the available cash. So in our Banner Bank, we have just over 4.4 million, and then in LGIP, we have 825,000. We are still earning interest. Our interest dropped a little bit from that 2% to 1.7 in the Banner Bank. LGIP is still going strong, though. So that's the first report. And then if you look at the fiscal '24 overview report, I just want to give an update on, you can kind of see in that second column under expenses, you can kind of see that we did not use all of our budget, budget to actual, like we did, but we did spend almost all of it. So there was a significant amount of spending that we did in fiscal year '24, and we are slowly bringing down the cash. For fiscal year '25, we didn't actually, even though you approved invoices, most of them were for fiscal year '24 last year, or last month, and so we did not cut invoices for fiscal year '25. So you'll see kind of a double up in December because you'll have November and December's on there. We have some vacancies in our office, so there's been a little bit of turnover, and we are in the middle of 3 audits, so.
Oh, my goodness.
So that is what I have as it regards to cash reports.
Okay. Any questions? We have a motion in regard to the monthly cash reconciliation.
Mr. Chair,
Ms. Warwick?
I move we accept the monthly cash reconciliation as presented.
Okay, we have a motion by Ms. Warwick. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Doty. Would the secretary call the roll?
Commissioner Warwick,
Yes.
Commissioner Doty,
Yes.
Commissioner Moore,
Yes.
Commissioner Allgood,
Yes.
Commissioner Cole,
Yes.
Commissioner Porter,
Yes.
Commissioner Brooks.
Yes.
Very good. This brings us to our project list.
Yes, so there's quite a few projects, like you heard an update about the wayfinding and that there's money going to be left over from that. I know we've talked several times about budget transfers and reallocation in the projects. I don't plan on doing that until the spring. I did get an update on like the Vineyard and Downtown Alley project, and that's starting in the spring, and so we want to try to see what projects are going to complete in the spring before we actually do any budget transfers into the USTIC project, because we know there's timing on some of these projects, and they'll start to close out. As to the update on the Vineyard and Downtown Alley project, because the email I received was that the contractor is supposed to start trenching sometime this month, And then, they will, and then the Idaho Power and Lumen are all ready to go, and we've already paid them, so they will be ready. They're also working with the electrical inspector to survey the buildings that will be converted to the underground power supply. And, yeah, so there's quite a bit going on. I believe if you want a copy of this email, I'd be happy to send it. There's a lot of details here.
Very good. If I could take just a minute and ask Rob to come up. We've got a couple of new commissioners here. We've been looking at this, the alley improvements and the Vineyard Public Space on our project list for a couple of years now. Can you remind everybody what these entail and why they were necessary and why Brent left and left you in charge of this?
I'm still trying to figure that one out
Yeah.
myself. Commissioner and chairman and commission. It was decided several years back that we were going to try to put a lot of that power underground that is in some of the downtown alleys. This alley in particular was identified. This is the alley between Blaine and Arthur. That basically runs all the way from the creek behind, trying to think of where, how to explain it, where the creek curves up. There's an alley that starts there, and then it crosses Kimball, and then it goes all the way down to 9th Avenue toward Keystone Pizza. And so the intent was to get all that power underground and then repave the alley so that it's more of a walkable area and get some lighting back there. And it has been a very tedious project from a coordination standpoint. One of the biggest issues with the project is we have to coordinate with every single property owner to upgrade their panel so that we can reconnect power to their building underground, and so there's a lot of coordination involved. The mini plaza that is located where the Vineyard is has been designed, but it can't be built until the power is put underground because of some of the pergola structure they have there, and so we're waiting to get the power put underground, and then they will be able to go in and build that little mini plaza where the Vineyard is. The one other thing to note is the power has to be built. It's phased in, so they have to build everything underground and get everything crossed over and reconnected before they can take the overhead power lines down, just to make sure everybody stays in service. And so there's a lot of phases to the project, and it's a long project, but it's finally kicking off, and we're very pleased with that.
Okay. Thank you, Rob. That's a good reminder. Thank you. Yep, appreciate that. Okay, was there anything else on the project list that you wanted to highlight?
No, I think that's it.
Okay, thank you, Raylene. Brings us to our economic development report from Mr. Jenkins.
Chairman, Commissioners, thank you. First, to start off, as I typically do with miscellaneous updates, I have Project Bingo. Been working with them for some time, but things are finally coming together. This is a large-scale grocer that has identified a site in East Caldwell. They're under contract on the property. They're finalizing an internal decision by early next year. The griddle that was referenced by Dean Pape with the Chase regarding Tillian, they're on the first floor on Main and 7th. We're working with them to open up their concept. Dean did mention the spring of next year. That is the timeline that they're targeting. Project Husky, this is a hotel project. This is KSA Investments. I'm sure you're familiar with this one. Working closely with them. We're still ironing out details for a forthcoming city council meeting. And then Project Sunny, we continue to work with this group. They're reviewing properties in downtown Caldwell. They have a food beverage concept they'd like to bring to the area. So restaurateurs are still looking at opportunities in Caldwell. Project Razorback, they're actively pursuing our market for a large-scale retail project. This big box group is exploring multiple locations, planning a new store in Caldwell within the next 2 years. As you all probably know, I'm at the airport, and it's very convenient at times to be located there as folks fly in and meet with our office. And in this case, definitely was helpful to be at that location and meet with them directly at the terminal building there. But that's just a side note. U-Stick in Middleton, so we are continuing to navigate that area as we plan for the future of commercial and retail-based projects. I'm getting with some of the landowners in that area to make sure that we're all on the same page regarding how that area might develop. I've met with one property owner that owns about 12 acres, and they're considering a retail commercial development as we speak, and this will correspond, in my opinion, with the future interchange that we're hopeful to bring to that side of town. The amphitheater group, we continue to work with Lexor Investments. They're planning to finalize their plans with the city of Caldwell. It says here at the November 18th meeting, that's obviously incorrect. We're actually looking at the January 21st meeting to talk more about this. And you know, this is just a very complicated project. We're still working through the nuts and bolts of it. Project Cape, we're working with an out-of-state brewery concept that would like to come to the downtown area. They're searching existing buildings with plans to open in the near future. Renewal Development, you all might be familiar with this one. This one's located off of I-84 and Franklin Road. This is done in conjunction with Pacific Companies. They're doing a big multifamily project there. They also have acreage for commercial. So they're going to start occupying their apartments next month. So January will be the start of that, and they are looking at 80% area median income, and they'll have 1 to 3 bedrooms with 504 total apartments. So that's going to add a ton of inventory to our dockets for apartments here in the city of Caldwell. They'll also have 3 acres of commercial land that will be developable. So that's a big project that we're excited to see occupied and full of life in the near future. Project Tile, this is a retail project that has a site under contract along Highway 2026. They'll bring a strong brand and reputation to the market. And then Caldwell, just as a side note, we're going to be highlighted soon with 2 national magazine sources. Business View magazine is the first. You may recognize that name. We've actually had 2 features already in there, and this will be our 3rd. And then Livability magazine, this will be our first with that group. North Caldwell Urban Renewal District, Project Horizon, continue to work with this large-scale manufacturer. Actually had some soft correspondence with this group, meaning just touching base with this group regarding the status of their project. They are still looking. They're still navigating how they're going to move forward with the plans. It's a pretty heavy lift, but a significant investment nonetheless. We continue to keep tabs on it. Maverick, this is one in North Caldwell. They're going to move forward. They're continuing to move forward with plans. They successfully annexed the property into the city of Caldwell, which was a huge step for them. And I anticipate seeing this one under construction early next year. They had to delay a little bit, as you heard from some other projects. Weather, all those things are always tricky this time of year. So they're gonna really start to kick things off next year. And then additional updates. This is according to Zillow, the 30-year fixed mortgage rate has decreased by 3 basis points to 6.31%. The 15-year fixed rate has dropped by 5 basis points to 5.65%. We're seeing a little bit of relief for home buyers on that side of things. As of October 2024, the inflation rate in the United States is 2.6%. This is an increase from the previous month's 2.4%. So inflation is still kind of sticking around. This is lower than the long-term average of 3.28%. That was what the inflation rate was last year. And then this is a chart that I put on here. I don't see it displayed, so I'll just kind of articulate it from my vantage point. Sorry, that's not it. That's okay, though. This is the GDP, biggest 5-year growth for the GDP. And when you hear GDP, this is gross domestic product. Ultimately, this is goods and services. And they're measuring according to the 5 years, so 2019 to 2024. I've listed here a top 10 of the states with the highest rates of GDP growth in that 5-year span, and Idaho is number 1 at 23.31% through that 5-year change. Florida's number 2, Arizona's number 3, Washington's number 4, Tennessee's number 5, Utah's number 6, Texas is number 7, Colorado's number 8, Nebraska number 9, Nevada number 10. You've probably heard of those states and their exorbitant growth rates, and we're certainly keeping up and staying on top with our GDP growth that we've seen in that 5-year span. So with that, I will stand for any questions you have.
Thank you, Mr. Jenkins. Any questions for Steve tonight? Mr. Cole?
Yeah, I just wanted to compliment Stephen. He took 3 hours of his time a couple of weeks ago just to kind of show me around, show me his office at the airport. And I know if I was in the business of wanting to bring a business into the community, I would have been really impressed with what Stephen said and how he handled that. So thanks, Stephen.
Thank you, Mr. Cole. I'll pay you later. I appreciate it.
Mr. Allgood?
Stephen, what's happening with the apartments up at the Domes Church? Where are we at on that? Did that stall? Is it moving? What's the story there?
Yeah, Chairman, Commissioner Allgood, they are still working through the process. Ultimately, it's a funding issue at this point. They are seeking tax credits through the state. I don't know if that's been determined yet. I believe in January they'll be notified if they were awarded those credits so they can move forward with the project or not.
Okay, so is hurry up and wait right now?
It is. It's a waiting game to see if they are privy to some of that funding that's available through the state.
Okay, Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Stephen.
Thank you.
Ophelia?
Good evening, Commissioners. Get this lower here. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and make this quick. So Downtown Updates Project Gym Juice. This one unfortunately did not work out. The building is now on the market for $1.3 million. Project Water, we're still looking for space. And the business continues to do pop-ups at the moment due to lack of space at an affordable rate. And I'll go through some leasing availability here in a moment so you can kind of get a better understanding of the product that we have in our downtown. Project Retail, this space unfortunately did not work out for this business. It did work out for another business, and this space was the Lit & Co. Space that's now been leased over to Firme. If you're familiar with Firme, they are a barbershop in our downtown. They are opening up a retail shop in that space now. Project Dime, again, entrepreneurs seeking for a large space, about 6,000 square feet of space. Unfortunately, funding is very limited, and we don't have too many options. New projects, we have Project Sugar, which Carrie mentioned. They are a local business in our community. They are seeking a new location. They have about roughly 10,000 followers. They've been in our community, I would say, my son and I used to eat here. Back in, oh goodness, so 10, maybe they've been around over 10 years, and they're looking for a new space as their lease is about to expire. So we're hoping that they have a couple options, like Carrie mentioned, her space or this other space. So we're hoping one of them works out for them. Again, we're looking at affordable leases, so it's tough to find that in our downtown. Our next project is Market. This is a local successful business that we currently have in our community that's seeking to open up a new space in our downtown. And they are going to participate in an open house this Friday. Hopefully that open house will take place this Friday, so they can view some space that may be affordable for them. I'm going to go ahead and move on to new business. Like I mentioned, Firme Retail, they are now occupying the former Lit & Co. space. The Good Spoon has been purchased by Craig, and he is a local here in the Treasure Valley. So if you follow them on social media, you'll see a lot of their social media kind of content, new content. He's done a great job with that space as well. So we wish Jason and his wife the best as they move forward. Then we have 716 Blaine Street, and that will be a Mexican market. So if you're familiar with Pantera, that kind of product, similar product, not by that family, but by another family, and that's coming soon in that space. And that space was actually affordable at $16 a square foot. And some business updates, Lux Theater, and I'll read you the manager's text message. So they had a great weekend. This was a message on December 2nd. He said, we set our attendance record 3 times this week. It was the busiest week that we've ever had since they opened. That was in 2018. So that goes to tell you that if you have great movies, people will show up. And there, obviously, all the parking stalls were taken that night. I myself watched Wicked that night. Great show. So fairly busy for him. I also spoke with some of the retail folks in the downtown, and they also have had a great weekend, and some of them have adjusted their hours to stay open later and really trying to capitalize on the foot traffic that we're getting in our downtown. And like Dean mentioned, his space, I spoke with the agent on December 3rd. He's working with Brianna Miller out of TOK. That last space that he mentioned, I'm not sure if it's changed since December 3rd, but she did mention that they are looking at, they have someone that's interested in the space. They're just reviewing that lease at the moment. And so we'll announce that as soon as that lease is signed. And another thing that I want to mention is that there was 29,000 visitors during Winter Wonderland kickoff. It was a rainy night, so I think that's what kept some folks away. And I did talk to the businesses downtown, and they did share that it's slower. It was slower than previous Winter Wonderland last year. However, the weekend following that was really, really busy, and that's probably due to the weather again. And then, Ms. Commissioner Moore, I wanted to follow up on a question that you had for me last meeting here. You had asked about vacancy rates in our downtown, so I'm going to go quickly through these vacancy rates. So we have retail space, 815 Arthur Street, and that's the Eagle Lodge. Was that right next to the post office? I think it was the Eagle Lodge. I remember playing bingo with my mother-in-law there. So that they have about 5,200 square feet of space. It's $15 a square feet in the basement. That's a little high in my opinion. And I did also spend some time with the owner last week just to kind of walk her through our downtown and sort of educate her on the various lease rates and why they work, why they don't work. And one of my suggestions to her was that she have an open house and invite other real estate agents who are working with clients, and that we in economic development would be happy to share that on our social media to kind of get some foot traffic through that space. And I did also suggest that she drop that lease rate, possibly even to $3, and do an increase, an annual increase. And again, that space has been vacant since September 6, 2022. So that's what I have for my date listed on here. And some of this information you'll be able to find on LoopNet or Crexi is where most real estate agents will list this sort of information on there. So again, working with her, she's very open to my suggestions, my idea. So continue to work with her. Then we have 619 Main Street. There's 2 spaces available. That was the former Haven space, and then owned by the Milled Olive out of Star, and they sold that to Tom Veazey. You might be familiar with that name because he's also the owner where the former 2C Yoga Studio was at before, and also the former axe throwing building. And Tom's done a wonderful job. I know you haven't seen him here. He hasn't really asked for anything from us, from the city, from URA. He's really done a lot of work to that building. It's looking amazing. Working with Brianna Miller out of TOK as well, and she's done a wonderful job. One of the feedbacks that I've seen, and I've encountered some of her clients down there, is that a lot of these buildings, I know Dean mentioned the office space, they don't have elevators. So that's been a struggle for some of these older buildings that have second floor space. So at one of my projects I've mentioned a few months ago, I mentioned a law firm as one of my projects. They actually landed in Nampa, and we had connected them with Sean Maybon, Derek Cooper, and Dean in terms of trying to find them space because of that elevator that they were needing. And unfortunately, none of those worked, but they did end up in Nampa, so we lost them to Nampa. Like I mentioned, 716 has been filled, and that was at $16 a square foot. Not sure if they negotiated that down. One of the things that the new leasee mentioned to me is that they were able to negotiate that down. I don't know if they were able to negotiate that, or at what rate they were able to negotiate that, but that's 6,000 square feet. And then we have 707 Main Street, which is the old military clothing store right next to Shift Boutique. There's been a lot of interest in that space because the lease rate's at $16 a square foot. However, the feedback that I've gotten for people that have visited the space, that needs a lot of work. So that's kind of where we're at with that. And unfortunately, there's not much we can do. As you all know, we don't have any incentives. And I was sharing with an entrepreneur that's still in the audience there, that a lot of these spaces, a lot of these people that I have conversations with end up in Nampa. It makes me a little upset because they're great, like a donut shop that I spent a lot of time with. Unfortunately, they went to Nampa. Lease rate was just the right amount that they were looking for at $10, $12. If you look at LoopNet, you'll find some spaces on First Street, so where Mesa Tacos is at $10 a square foot. Then you have office space that's at $18 a square foot. Then you have other spaces that are at $15 a square foot. Plus they come with the grease trap incentive and other incentives. And I'm happy to gather those numbers just to kind of paint a better picture of all those incentives that these business gets. I get a little jealous when they go over there because I do a lot of the work and then they end up in Nampa. And like I mentioned, Tillian has about almost leased there. And then we have the Sturenberg Building, 708 Main Street with the Jiu-Jitsu place, is at Gracie Barra. That space, when I spoke to the owner of that space, they were waiting, they're sort of waiting for, they're taking their time in building that space out, so that's kind of the holdup there. But they're great people to work with there at that space, and it's $18 a square foot for the office space, and it's $19 for the floor space, so that's kind of what we're looking at. And then Carrie mentioned the 920, the trolley space, which is 921. She did share that she's flexible. So right now with Project Sugar, I've sent over everything that Project Sugar needs to try to see if we can get it at $4,000 a square foot. So that's sort of what their budget, what they're working with. And then 820 Arthur, that's right next to the sign building. This was purchased by Yuri Blanco, and she built out 18 to 20 suites there. She only has 5 suites left. So she's leasing those suites at $550. So again, affordable is gonna get your spaces leased. So again, we're only working with 5 of those suites left out of the 18 or 20 suites that are there. 521 Main Street, that's the old V Sports Arena space. That kind of fluctuates between $7 to $8 a square foot. As you're familiar, possibly familiar with the owners, those individuals have purchased the Shine Nutrition. And they've been very, very positive in their new space. They love being in the new space, owning that business. So it's working for them on the plaza. Unfortunately, it did not work for them being in the basement. And so that was one of the spaces that I did share with 815 Arthur, that even at $7 a square foot, you're not getting a lot of traction there. And then we have 502, 506. Stephen brought this project in front of you. That is here on Main Street. Currently, YCAP is leasing some space there. I have sent individuals over there, but there's a lot of work that needs to be done with those spaces. Therefore, you see those vacancies there lasting a little bit longer. And then we have 819 Main Street, that's Acapulco. It's on the market for $1.3 million as is, or a conventional loan. So I've sent some folks over there as well, and unfortunately it just didn't work out for them. 1117 South Avenue, that's on the plaza, that's a fire and ice, that's at $25 a square foot plus triple net. And so that's a little tougher for an entrepreneur. And like I said, we have an entrepreneur in the audience, and I was just asking her about her former lease space on the plaza. And it has to make sense, right, for them to be able to not only pay themselves, but also make that profit. And then we have 712 Main Street, that's above Mesquite Creek Outfitters, that's at $24 a square feet with no elevator. So that's kind of what we're working with. That's kind of what I have to work with. And so I do a lot of eating. I've gained a lot of weight trying to bring the right product here to our community, but that's what I'm up against, these lease rates.
Mr. Moore.
Thank you for following up on that.
Yeah.
That's interesting. So we're from 15, 16, all the way to 24 square feet. And, you know, I just talked to a developer today, and he was telling me on Meridian Road, they're looking at $32 a square foot for a fast food restaurant, a national chain.
Yeah.
At $32 a square foot. I also talked to somebody yesterday at the marketplace over by Costco, and they had worked with economic development here, and they had good things, great things to say about the experience they went through with you and Stephen. They were ready to come here, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I drove all the way over here just to have your items. And they said, and I go, gosh, I just left downtown Caldwell, and there's 1 million people down here. And they said they had something that came up over there that somebody fell out of the lease, and they fell into that. Otherwise, they would have came here. So, you know, that tells me that you guys are meeting the public, you're beating the street, you got your eyes and ears peeled. So thank you very much on that. I think that's very good information. Good information to know.
You're very welcome.
Thanks, Mr. Moore. Mr. Allgood?
Yes, when we were talking to Dean earlier, he was throwing out ideas for the second floor of his new phase, and he threw out the idea of medical briefly. Are we seeing any medical interest in the downtown area?
Not right now in terms of medical viewing patients, sort of like your urgent care. I don't think we'll see that down here because we will have to figure out parking. So I don't see that happening in our downtown. In terms of maybe behavioral health, we might be able to see that. And that's more of one, when I'm talking about behavioral health, I'm talking about psychiatry, that type of business, or even counselors, you may be able to see a little bit more of that. So maybe that's what he referenced in terms of medical, but there's just, medical just has so many different branches that, but in seeing something like in urgent care, I just don't see that happening.
So you haven't, there's been nothing specific
Nothing
downtown?
specific. There's a medical center that Salter occupied off of 10th, former Salter, that hasn't been occupied, and that is at, I believe, $22 a square foot. Hasn't been occupied at the moment that I'm aware of, so it's gonna be a little tougher.
Any other questions? Very good, thanks, Ophelia. Brings us to our,
There may be a miscommunication there, a misunderstanding. We'll get that worked out here shortly, and then, but I expect to see that certificate of completion here the next meeting or two, depending on when those final kind of punch list items get done. And just while we're on the topic, when these RFPs that we issue that turn into projects, when those are complete, the process ends with the adoption of a certificate of completion, and that document is recorded because a memorandum of the development agreement is recorded and imposes all kinds of limitations and conditions upon the developer to develop the project. And so really it's the final sign-off that the agency has when they're done. And we did a partial one for the Tillian. When phase one was complete, we did a partial one for the theater just a couple of months ago. So that's what's going on there and how it fits into the larger development process in the DDA. In your package, you'll find a memorandum from my office that talks about the legal basis for the agency to retain properties. And I was candid about this last time, I have told the commissioners that those really needed to be divested, presumably transferred to the city of Caldwell. That is always an option. The agency can transfer property to the city and vice versa, and that has happened. The city's transferred properties to the agency for redevelopment. So that remains an option at any time, but it is simply not required that those be transferred. And there are a handful that were acquired with the east area, which is now Sunset. But based on the analysis there, it's our opinion that the agency can hang on to those. If you want to see them redeveloped, we probably need to create a project area for those, whether that is site-specific or maybe there's a line we can draw that connects multiple of them, but that would be our advice, is probably best to create a project area if you want to, move forward with redevelopment. But if that's planned, there's no need to transfer those to the city and then get them back from the city. You can hang on to them based on what's there. Without getting too nerdy, I think the confusion arose out of the fact that there was a 2002 law passed that required the agency to place in its plan provisions for retaining property after the sunset of the project area. The plan that's sunsetting predates that. It was adopted by the City Council in 1998. And so it doesn't have those provisions, but it wouldn't be expected to have those provisions. So anyway, if you've got questions on the memorandum, feel free to give Doug or I a call, or I certainly would stand for questions now. Moving on, the update on Site A, which is the Kimball and Arthur site. That will be before the City Council for the final step of the process, the adoption of the ordinance. There will be a hearing that's scheduled for a week from tonight. If that passes, then the ordinance will be published in the newspaper by summary, which is what we do with all ordinances. That is the effective date. From the effective date, there's a period of 30 days within which that could be challenged for any legal reason, whether it was a procedural reason, a substantive reason, something like that. After that period of time, the creation of the area cannot be challenged, and that's done by the legislature intentionally. It's extremely short statute of limitations, and it's because once that area is formed, the legislature understands that the agency will be engaging private interests in binding contracts that might include a developer or probably not in this case, but it could in other areas include bonding companies, investors, that kind of thing. And so that should be, we certainly don't anticipate a challenge, but we'll probably circle the date on the calendar, which will be sometime in the middle of January to late January. I don't think we need to delay the RFP process. And so I think, assuming that this passes on Monday, I'll work with Stephen to finalize the draft RFP and get it issued maybe by the end of the year or shortly after. That concludes my report to you. I'd certainly stand for questions.
Any questions for Mr. Hilty?
Mr.
Moore?
Chair.
Oh, I'm sorry. Ms. Warren, let's go with you.
So, question, who decides when a property is substantially complete? You know, for instance, the Mike Mussel project, who goes and looks at that and says, yes, it is, or no, it isn't?
Sure. It's typically going to be Rob or his department, building department. The DDAs provide that if the certificate of occupancy has been issued, generally it's appropriate for a certificate of completion. In this case, there's oversight of parking lots both by engineering and by planning and zoning. And so engineering looks at, I think, the structural integrity of the paving and the size of the spaces and those kinds of things, where planning and zoning is looking at kind of the landscaping type stuff. My understanding, Rob's not here, I think we've signed off from the engineering side. I think it's structurally fine, but there are some landscaping issues. So it would be relevant city departments. Ultimately, when we're talking about the certificate of completion, it's the commission that decides when it's complete based on what you're hearing from staff. And we're really relying on the city, the permitting authorities at the city to kind of tell us when it's complete.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Moore?
Yeah, Mark, thanks for the updates tonight. I appreciate that. The bridge on Kimball, I should have asked Rob, what bridge on Kimball is he talking about?
It doesn't look like a bridge. It's right there by that gazebo.
Oh.
And so it's right there. And so it's got kind of these wings on either side, but it's technically, I guess, a bridge. And that's what he's talking about.
And the issue with that is some sort of structural issue, is that right?
I only
what it
know
was?
what I heard him say tonight. I guess I've heard him say it before, but yeah, these bridges are always inspected.
Yeah.
This one's old and needs to be replaced.
Oh, okay, I got it. I was just standing there Saturday night and I'm going, what? Jeez, I want to fall in the river.
I don't know that it's an imminent threat, but obviously they got to get out ahead of it.
Yeah, great. And those kind of things that come up, I mean, I'm sure Mr. Cooper's got to deal with that, and we understand that. I mean, that's a process that has to be dealt with. So I guess my frustration is just not seeing that developer stand here and then put other people, and I know they're qualified and everything, but it just, we've asked, I don't know how long, and it always comes up, it always comes back up and we're presented, and gosh, I almost feel like I'm at a point where I want to walk out. I don't want to hear from economic development. I want to hear from the developer or you. And that makes me feel like the project.
You don't want to hear from me, is what you mean, right?
Well, yeah, it might cost more money, right?
Well, no, I understand what you're saying.
Yeah.
And I think between Steve and I, we've been reaching out to these developers with live projects for I talked to Mike Mussel about coming tonight, even though he's right at the tail end. We can't make him get here, but we can certainly convey this message.
Yeah, and I hate to see that somebody's reporting, and if something changes, and they're reporting on something that they were told, and it's almost like they're looped in. And coming to these meetings and coming to city council, it's almost like it just needs to be a specific piece of the language in the RFP that they have to come and report on it, or somebody in their organization or business comes and report on it, and take the liability away from folks.
If I may.
Yeah,
I mean,
go ahead.
I know it's been an ongoing frustration for some of you, all of you, to a certain extent. I think, that I just want you to know that we are conveying that message. And there are times when the projects there's less to report, and I think at times we've gotten some pushback from them. There's obviously times like tonight, Dean pointed out that, he has company Christmas party tonight. There's things come up.
Sure.
But I want you to know, we both, Stephen and I, are conveying that.
Yeah.
And we're not making you guys the bad guy, but we are saying that it's you telling us reasons why you don't think it's super important for you to be here don't matter. you know, that you need to be here.
Sure.
Especially when they can appear via, you know, the video conference, or
Yeah.
have somebody from their team come.
Yeah, and read an email or give us an update. I just, you know, and Mr. Maven made a comment, we show up, and I just feel like if the developer's showing up, or if somebody from that team showing up, we're still got a partnership and we're still going forward.
Yeah.
So, anyway, I don't want to be creating issues or drama or anything like that, but I want to make sure that we are all working together to one goal. So thank you for your updates.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you. Brings us toward the tail end here. Any commissioner reports? Very good. Well, I have, if you'll indulge me for about 5 minutes, I've got something that I'd like to speak to. And I'll get to argue with this little device, I think. This is an overview, many hours driving through as a cop, that Dave has spent all kinds of time avoiding Chris, probably, you know, in this neighborhood. Julie goes through the neighborhood constantly, and I'm wondering what our obligation is to the people that live in this area. And especially as we're talking about a 5-year plan with benchmarks and talking about a larger allocation area in this part of our city that's so desperate, I wonder about our obligation to the people. These are people that don't whine and complain about parking meters or dirt lots. They're doing their best just to live and survive. There are no supermarkets within walking distance. There is no dock in a box close by. These people live with nothing. The Steunenberg house that's across from where CHA has deposited the Rice House for now. Ophelia was able to learn that that particular home might be available for either remanagement or purchase or some kind of an option to kind of dress up that corner. But it's inhabited mostly by people that are under the watchful eye of a parole officer, and relocating folks is kind of tough. But, you know, they're still part of our community. That's the house. We love it. I mean, we're stunned by its artistic ability, even when it's painted horribly. I mean, it's still a striking place, and we're, you know, grudgingly proud of it. Then we go to 523 Freeport. And this is an important home to me because I was able to minister to some people that lived there. This is it. I took this afternoon. And I married the son of the woman who used to live here. And the woman lived here with her severely diabetic self and her mentally challenged adult son. About a half a mile from Lyons Park. Half a block from Lyons Park. Then we go over to 302 Denver. And I was part of a team from the Housing Authority that did some work in this area a couple of years ago. There's a lady out at Farmway Village who was simply known as the Corn Lady because she would go and boil corn and then serve it up to the people that lived at Farmway. She was a Latino lady, and that was her thing. And after several months, nobody could find the Corn Lady. Nobody knew where she was. So they did a little investigating. They contacted her son, and son gave them the address. So they went to check on the Corn Lady. And she's living, this is before the remodeling. See this portion that would be on the left-hand side of the frame? That's an add-on as part of the remodel about 2 years ago. She's living in this half a garage, basically, that's shown up in the grayish-blue portion there. She's living there. Her electricity is given to her by her landlord, who sits up at this corner of Denver and 3rd. by one of those orange extension cords. She cooks over an open fire. Her restroom facilities are an old bathtub that's placed inside this structure. And she's paying $400 a month. When CHA found out that she was living here, they went to see what they could do because she was suffering terribly. I mean, the reason they hadn't seen her was because she had pneumonia in a pretty severe case of it. At this point, when they discovered her here, the landlord had moved in a husband and wife and a toddler. They had moved in, they had pushed all of this, the corn lady's things to one side, and she was living in one corner, and this other family was living in the rest of the building. They used a bathtub as a commode, and it was just terrible, terrible situation. And this is less than a half a mile away from where we're sitting right now. The property on Freeport is 0.6 of a mile from here. Steunenberg, that's a half a mile. Caldwell has done some remarkable things, and urban renewal has accomplished some remarkable things. We have lit an economic engine that now we're wondering how to manage and how to make our way. But lost in all of the good news is our unwillingness to take an ugly selfie of ourselves and ask, what are we doing for our neighbors? What are we doing for the people that aren't seeing all the advantages of this economic upturn? Again, I think it's imminent on us to consider a broader area through this part of our city. I used to be in the photography business, and I used to show people on their camera, well, here's a self-timer. It gives you a 10-second delay so you can go around and get in the picture yourself. People would say, I'd never use that. And now we've entered an age where the most disposed of photograph is the selfie, because we'll take 10 until we get the picture that we want. This is one of Caldwell's selves of us. And as an urban renewal agency, we just can't turn our back to this kind of a need while we're all kind of chasing the bright stars of economic development. Both of those are within our ability to do something about. And as we enter a new year with a new plan, with a 5-year strategy, I would just suggest that we take a long, hard look at this part of our city where we've been negligent, where the city over the decades has just not built into this neighborhood, and that we take it seriously. Now, I will stand for a motion for adjournment. All right. Thanks, folks. We're adjourned.
Thank you.